Hey, welcome back. If you're watching this today, May 11th, 2026, you need to understand what's happening with Iran right now, because this morning Donald Trump went on social media and said the ceasefire with Iran is on, and I quote, massive life support. That's the president of the United States basically telling the world this thing could fall apart at any moment. And if it does, we're talking about one of the most dangerous situations on the planet right now. A war that involves two nuclear-armed alliances, a blocked oil choke point that supplies 20% of the world's energy, and a negotiation that nobody seems able to close. So today I'm going to break all of this down for you. Where did this war come from? What are both sides actually fighting over? Why is a deal so hard to reach? And most importantly, what happens next? If you're new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. I post every single day covering geopolitics from angles that mainstream American media tends to miss. Let's get into it. To understand what's happening today, you need to go back to the night of February 28th, 2026. That evening, without any public warning, the United States and Israel launched a massive coordinated military operation against Iran. The U.S. codenamed it Operation Epic Fury. 2 aircraft carrier strike groups, scores of advanced aircraft, Israeli jets joining from the west, all hitting Iran simultaneously. The targets: Iran's nuclear facilities, its ballistic missile infrastructure, its military leadership. And in the very first hours of the operation, the Supreme Leader of Iran, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, was killed. Think about that for a second. The man who had led the Islamic Republic for over 30 years, gone in one night. Now, why did this happen? The official U.S. and Israeli position was that diplomacy had completely failed. For months, there had been indirect negotiations, mostly through Oman, trying to get Iran to agree to limit its nuclear program. And according to reports, those talks were actually going somewhere. The Omani foreign minister said there was significant progress. Iran was reportedly willing to make concessions. But then Trump said he was, quote, not thrilled with the direction of the talks. And Netanyahu had spent months pushing Washington to act. The argument was simple. Iran was enriching uranium at 60% purity. A nuclear weapon requires 90%. They were getting too close. And both Washington and Jerusalem decided the window to act militarily was now or never. So they acted. And what followed was 40 days of sustained warfare. Now, here's what a lot of American media underplays. Iran hit back hard. Within hours of the first U.S.-Israeli strikes, Iran launched hundreds of missiles and thousands of drones, targeting Israel, targeting U.S. military bases across the Gulf, and hitting civilian and military infrastructure across 6 Gulf Arab states: Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, and Oman. Israel's missile defense systems intercepted a large portion, but Iranian missiles still caused serious damage. Dozens were killed across the region. The Gulf was in chaos. But Iran's most powerful move, and this is the one that changed everything globally, was closing the Strait of Hormuz. Now, if you don't know what the Strait of Hormuz is, let me explain why it matters. It's a narrow waterway, at its narrowest point, just 33 kilometers wide, sitting between Iran and the Arabian Peninsula. And through that strait flows roughly 20% of the world's entire oil supply. Every single day, tankers from Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Kuwait, Iraq, they all have to pass through there to reach global markets. When Iran shut it down, the world felt it immediately. Oil prices exploded. Saudi Aramco, the largest oil company on earth, publicly warned of a supply shock unlike anything seen in decades. Gas prices in the United States spiked. Inflation, which had just started to calm down, started creeping back up. Trump even floated the idea of suspending the federal gas tax to give Americans relief. This was Iran's leverage, and they knew it. If you're finding this useful so far, do me a favor, drop a like on this video right now. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people who want real geopolitical analysis. Thank you. After 40 days of fighting, something unexpected happened. A ceasefire. On April 8th, 2026, a 2-week conditional ceasefire was announced. And the country that made it happen? Not the United States, not the European Union, not China, Pakistan. Pakistan's army chief, General Asim Munir, the same man who 1 year earlier had guided Pakistan through its own 4-day war with India, stepped in as the key mediator between Washington and Tehran. He negotiated directly with U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, and Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. The ceasefire came into effect on April 8th. Trump announced it. He said it was contingent on Iran reopening the Strait of Hormuz, quote, complete, immediate, and safe. Both sides claimed some version of victory, and for a moment it seemed like the worst was over. It wasn't. Here's the problem. Since the ceasefire began, it has been violated by both sides. The Strait of Hormuz, still not fully open. Ships are still being blocked, boarded, or turned back. The U.S. Navy and Iranian forces have had direct confrontations in the strait, even after the ceasefire declaration. Kuwait, the UAE, and Iran itself reported intercepting drones over their territories just this past weekend. And now we're in a full negotiating deadlock. Here's what the U.S. wants. Washington sent Iran a 14-point proposal. The key demands: Iran must completely stop enriching uranium for at least 12 years. Iran must hand over the approximately 440 kilograms of uranium it has already enriched to 60% purity. Iran must reduce its ballistic missile capabilities. And Iran must cut off its support for regional proxy groups, meaning Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, and other armed groups across the Middle East. In exchange, the U.S. would gradually lift sanctions and unfreeze billions of dollars in Iranian assets. Now, here's what Iran wants. Tehran submitted a 10-point counterproposal. Iran says, end all hostilities immediately, including Israeli attacks on Lebanon. Provide international guarantees that the U.S. and Israel will not attack again. Pay war reparations for the destruction caused. Lift sanctions. And on the nuclear issue, Iran is firm. Nuclear enrichment is a red line. The Iranian head of the Atomic Energy Organization has publicly stated that any attempt to limit Iran's enrichment program will fail. Period. Iran's position is this: we are not negotiating our nuclear program while a war is ongoing. End the war first, then we talk. And Trump's response this morning, he called Iran's proposal, again, I'm quoting directly, totally unacceptable. And he accused Iran of playing games with the United States and the rest of the world. Iran's parliament speaker fired back the same day and said their armed forces are ready to deliver a response to any aggression and that they are prepared for every option. That's where we are as of right now today. By the way, if you have a take on this, I want to hear it. Drop it in the comments. Do you think Iran will back down, or do you think the ceasefire is already dead? Let me know what you think. I read every comment. Now, let me give you the deeper analysis, because the surface level back and forth doesn't tell the full story. The core issue is trust, or rather, the complete absence of it. Iran entered negotiations with the Trump administration before the war in early 2026. Those talks were showing genuine progress. Oman was mediating. Concessions were being floated. And then on February 28th, while those talks were still ongoing, the bombs started falling. Iran made what it thought was a good faith diplomatic effort and got bombed in return. So when analysts ask why Iran is being so difficult now, that's your answer. As one analyst told Al Jazeera, Iran believes negotiations with the Trump administration require time and patience, because the last time they moved quickly, they got hit. There's also the nuclear question, which is existential for Iran. Successive U.S. administrations have demanded zero enrichment, but Iran argues, and this is technically correct under international law, that as a signatory to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, it has the right to enrich uranium for civilian purposes. The 2015 nuclear deal allowed enrichment up to 3.67%. Iran is currently at 60%. The U.S. wants zero. Iran says never. Some analysts believe there may be a middle ground, right? A time-limited commitment, perhaps 20 years as the U.S. has floated, or 5 years as Iran has countered. Others suggest a third country, perhaps Russia, could take Iran's enriched uranium as part of a deal. But Iran has said publicly that its uranium will, quote, under no circumstances be transferred anywhere. And then there's the Lebanon problem. Pakistan's ceasefire agreement was supposed to include all fronts, including Lebanon, where Israel has continued striking Hezbollah positions. Netanyahu rejected that interpretation immediately. He said Lebanon is not part of the deal. Trump backed him up. Iran said the attacks on Lebanon are a violation. And every time Israel bombs Lebanon, Iran is pushed further away from any agreement. Let me zoom out now and show you the broader picture, because this isn't just a U.S.-Iran story. Qatar has stepped in. Qatar's prime minister met with Vice President Vance, Secretary of State Rubio, and Steve Witkoff in Washington last week. Qatar maintains talking channels with almost everyone in the Middle East, including Iran, and they are actively trying to bridge the gap. Saudi Arabia and Egypt are also engaged diplomatically. The Gulf states were hit by Iranian missiles. Their economies depend on stable oil markets. They cannot afford a resumption of full-scale war. China is in the background. Reports have confirmed that Beijing was involved in aspects of the ceasefire negotiations. China has enormous economic interests in Iranian oil, and it does not want to destabilize Middle East. And Pakistan, don't sleep on Pakistan's new role here. In 1 year, Pakistan has gone from fighting a nuclear standoff with India to becoming one of the most important diplomatic mediators in the world. General Asim Munir has been to Tehran, to Washington, and is the central communication channel between both sides. This is a remarkable shift in Pakistan's geopolitical position, and almost nobody in the Western press is giving them credit for it. Share this video if you think more people need to understand what's actually going on here. Because I promise you, most people are not paying attention to how significant Pakistan's role is right now. Now, let me talk about the scenario nobody wants to think about, but everybody needs to understand what happens if this ceasefire collapses. First, the Strait of Hormuz stays closed or gets even more aggressively blocked. That means oil prices spike higher. We're talking potential $150, even $180 a barrel. The global economy, which is still recovering from years of inflation and trade disruption, takes another massive hit. And the United States, despite its own domestic oil production, is not immune. Oil is a global commodity. Everyone pays when Hormuz chokes. Second, Iran has made clear it is prepared for every option. That's diplomatic language for we can escalate. Iran still has long-range missiles. It still has proxy networks in Yemen, Iraq, and parts of Syria. And the Houthis in Yemen have never fully stopped launching drones and missiles. Third, Israel could re-enter the conflict more aggressively. Netanyahu has never been fully committed to this ceasefire. He's already attacking Lebanon. A ceasefire collapse gives him a green light to go much further. And fourth, and this is the part that should concern everyone, nobody has replaced Khamenei in any meaningful way. Iran's leadership structure is in flux. When you have a country with nuclear enrichment capabilities, significant military assets, and an uncertain command structure, the risk of miscalculation goes up dramatically. This is not a situation where the worst outcome is just higher gas prices. The worst outcome here is a region-wide war with no clear end state and no adult in the room to stop it. Here's my take on all of this. The United States went into this war with a clear military objective: destroy Iran's nuclear capabilities and pressure the regime. On the military side, they achieved significant damage. Khamenei is dead. Iran's nuclear infrastructure is severely degraded. Its air defenses are weakened. But here's the thing about wars of choice. Winning militarily doesn't automatically mean you win diplomatically. And right now, the United States is in a position where it won the battle but hasn't figured out the peace. Iran, for its part, is playing this the only way it knows how. Delay, hold firm, don't show weakness, and use every piece of leverage available. The Strait of Hormuz is the ultimate leverage card, and Tehran is not giving it up for free. What needs to happen, and what most serious analysts would agree on, is that both sides need to separate the immediate ceasefire question from the longer-term nuclear question. Stop the shooting first, reopen Hormuz, then deal with the nuclear issue through a structured process with real verification mechanisms. But that requires trust, and right now there is none. So watch this space. The next 48 to 72 hours are critical. If Trump escalates his rhetoric further and Iran doesn't move, we could be looking at a return to open conflict. And if that happens, the consequences will be felt not just in the Middle East, but at your gas station, in your supermarket, and across global markets. That's it for today. If you found this breakdown useful, subscribe right now. I drop a new video every single day, and share this one with someone who needs to understand what's really going on in the Middle East. Drop your prediction in the comments. Will there be a deal, or is this ceasefire already finished? I'll see you tomorrow.